Let It Rock, Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die, Sex, Seditionaries and World's End. 430 King's Road in London's Chelsea has been at the cutting edge of UK culture for over 45 years. Not only was it the birthplace of punk, but it's also the crucible of creativity for an icon of our age. Vivienne Westwood has been fashion forward for over 40 years. Her influence, passion and personality have propelled her to superstardom. But what she really wants to be known for is her tireless campaigning to save the world. The countdown is on to the CNBC conversation with Dame Vivienne Westwood. I've just got to start by asking you about your T-shirt, which I can see under there, because you wore this to 10 Downing Street when you met our Prime Minister Theresa May. You've got Theresa Talk Vivienne. Tell me about it, and did you get to talk to her?
It was very quick. That's why I took a dress like this, so I could just go there, because she's talking to everybody, and say, I got to talk to you for 20 minutes. The main reason why I have to talk to Theresa May, it's probably the most important thing I need to say, which is that the world is controlled, the whole world is controlled by 1 million people. 1 million people control 7 billion. Who are these million? They're what I call the anti-people. They're not pro-people, they are against people. And they are the banks and the big conglomerates and the politicians who work for them. And so it is in fact the rotten financial system that they run that is our enemy. If we can change the rotten financial system, we can change the world. What I want to tell Theresa May is, you could be the most wonderful woman in the world. You could be the most important person that ever trod on this planet. Because if you wanted, you could turn it around. You could stop applying the rotten financial system and employ a system that gives equality to people. It's designed to give equality, not to give siphoning off and austerity. And she apparently wants to try to help people. She won't be able to unless she starts to attack the money system. And you start, first of all, you need to bring in a green economy. But it really could, and otherwise, you know, like Theresa, you think, you know, I'm Prime Minister, I'll go down in history, you know. You won't go down in history because there won't be any history. By the time you die, there won't even be any history. If you want to be the same as everybody who came before you, David Cameron, Tony Blair, you're all the same. As soon as one goes, another one comes in. What you've all got in common is you're all applying this terrible system, which is not only making everybody poor, even dying from the fumes in the air and all kinds of terrible war. Everything is caused by this system.
What is the solution? What would you put in place? You talk about the banks, but the banks and investors, it's big business for a lot of people. How can you stop that? What would you put in place of the capitalist society that you talk about not working?
Right.
What would you like to see in place of the governments?
Well, one thing that I think that activists need to do is to try to tell people what this new world would be if we swapped this terrible financial system for a fair financial system. Because we've got to have a green economy. And a green economy is a fair economy. We live in a myth. People believe that somehow the whole of evolution is done for one end result, which is us. And this could even be literary. We might be the very last creatures on the planet. We might have killed everything and ourselves. Not straight away, because we've still got this green bit left.
Well, I just want to ask you, Vivienne, in terms of you talking about influencing governments. Of course, you had COP21 in Paris.
Yes.
And China and the USA have ratified the agreements there. The UK hasn't quite yet. Do you feel, though, that that is going in the right direction and that they could be going in the direction that you're saying we need to?
Well, I don't even bother to think about it really, because all you need to know is as soon as they actually do something, then you can believe that they've got some sort of an agreement. They can agree as much as they like, but they've not done one thing. You know, not one government has stopped somebody from fracking, for example. And fracking is bankruptcy. It bankrupts the people who do it, then it's subsidised by the taxpayer, but it also bankrupts the earth, it kills the earth. You know, and it's total false, it's just investment. I could explain that the whole world is bankrupt. That's an example. But yeah.
Vivienne, it seems like obviously it's a very pessimistic view of the world that we live in now. And you talked about your life, and in your life so far, Vivienne, where has this all come from? You know, where has this view come from? Where has this passion, this activism come from within your own life?
Well, as a child, I wouldn't say this to people. I kept this secret to myself as a child, and I kept it for a very long time. But when I was 4 years old, I saw a picture of the crucifixion, and I was brought up a Protestant, and I was so shocked. And I thought, even then, I thought I'm a stupid person. I have to try and behave sensibly like grown-ups. Children don't know what's happening. And I just thought to myself, at the time I really remember, and remember the whole thing. And I decided that I didn't believe my parents anymore. They lost credibility in my eyes. And I just had a baby brother, and he was sitting on my mother's knee, and I remember my mum asking me to come and sit on her knee, and I thought, no, you can have your baby. I'm not going to sit on your knee, because, you know, you don't know what's going on. You've been telling me all about baby Jesus, but you didn't tell me that people would this could ever happen in the world. And I've given you a long explanation there, and I kept it to myself till quite recently, actually. But what I want to say is that I really thought I had to be a freedom fighter. I thought, they're not doing it. I will never let this happen to anybody in the world again. Now then, the funny thing is, why don't other children all feel like that?
Yeah, exactly. Why
you know,
was it
I don't know,
yes.
but I do think it's to do with all activists, and lawyers, and all people who try to do some good in the world. They do it because they want to help people, and they want the world to be a better place. And you know, so we are all the same. But I do think that, you know, obviously we do have it in degrees, you know, our empathy and our sympathy and our care for people.
Still ahead, Vivienne Westwood on punk, McLaren and capitalism.
We decided that the hippie thing was kind of over. We don't like the older generation. You're too square. It's all young kids and it's rock and roll. And then we look for other motives of rebellion.
I'm just going to talk a little bit now about your upbringing, and we can go back to linking it to how you feel about the world. But of course, you were brought up in Derbyshire, you moved to London at 17, you were at Harrow Art School for a little bit, and then you became a teacher. So how did you make that transition from a teacher to the fashion designer that you are?
When I came to London, all my choices in my relationships have been with people who can tell me something, who know what's going on in the world better than I did. And I'll just jump to when I met Malcolm McLaren, for example, because that is why I stayed with Malcolm, because I thought he was a Jewish boy, and his family were much more cosmopolitan, and they did know what was going on in the world, and he was quite political, Malcolm, in those days. And so that really attracted me to him, as well as well, actually, that's what I liked Malcolm, and it took me ages, and then the penny dropped, and I thought, I must be ridiculous. This man is fantastic. Why don't I, you know, why am I with somebody else? Why shouldn't I be with him? Anyway, whatever. And he was after me, so that's how it happened. And later on in life, I felt that Malcolm lost it. He was too egotistical, too wanted success, didn't ever care about finding out the truth anymore, just wanted to be a celebrity or a trouble causer. That's what he wanted to be. And then with Malcolm, I decided to help him. I had 2 children by then, and the little one was, you know, I wasn't going to, oh yeah, it's true. You know, Malcolm was so unhelpful that I had a little boy 4, yeah, he's 4 years older, Ben, than my Joe. And when Joe was 6 weeks old, I had to take him to the nursery school in order to go back to work. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you juggle all of that, Vivienne, at that time?
At that time, the answer is horrible, really, which is that we got rid of the children temporarily. My youngest boy, at 3 years old, we sent him to boarding school, poor little thing. I got him out soon after I had to. Then he went to a local ballet school after that. and my eldest boy, I sent him to live with his father for a bit while we managed. Anyway, so they did come back eventually when they were a bit older, and they went to the local schools then at that point.
And of course it was the days of punk, you know, and the King's Road and World's End, and you had your shop there, and it went through lots of different names, and Let It Rock was one, Sex was another. What was it like in those days?
It was brilliant in London, the attitude of people did feel so free to be able to do what they wanted, to get a life. Everybody had a life, and it was, and everybody was flouting authority, and you know, people were being arrested for we got arrested eventually for pornography, because we had a T-shirt with a penis on it and whatever, and in those days it was difficult. You know, and everybody was having great fun, and we decided that the hippie thing was kind of over. We don't like the older generation. You're too square. It's all young kids and it's rock and roll, and that's where we started. And then we looked for other motives of rebellion, and then the next thing we got all interested in rubber wear and leather. You know, the rockers, and then. Rubber. We loved rubber because we thought that rubber wear was a sexual thing, and that the society was frightened of rubber and sex, and we all had to be, you know, correct. And so that was also rebellion, and we put the whole thing together. And in the end, what I really wanted to do was, through all these themes, torn clothes and chains and zips and biker boots and Hell's Angels feeling, you know, that we put together a collection of our own punk rock.
Did you think that the punk rock movement at the time, Vivienne, though, would be so iconic? Because I mean, now it's 40 years later, there's going to be a celebration of it. So back then, did you ever imagine that it could have been so iconic?
Well, what's happened now, it's just become petrified into an icon, and it's very boring. And there are gurus who, you know, tell you all the sociology and importance of punk. But I'm afraid, to me, it was just a marketing opportunity. And I got bored with it when I realised that the punks were only interested in jumping around and spitting and having a great time. And there's nothing you need to tell young people, and they will. The one thing, if you tell young people, they will join you immediately. We're against the older generation. You're where it's at. Let's change everything. But if they didn't really have I realised that I wasn't going to change anything. It was just a marketing opportunity. You know, wear a razor blade in your ear and a safety pin, and that's why we put one on the Queen's lip. But yeah, anyway, so I got lost, I got bored by it. And then I only realised afterwards Malcolm wasn't so clever. He was always looking what everybody else was doing.
You started so many trends, Vivienne. How have you managed to sustain it? Because as we've talked about, your brand is still so popular. How do you sustain that? How do you keep the trend and stay relevant? Because everyone still looks up to you.
Well, I think you have to have talent. And a lot of people today think that somehow there's so much more talent than there really is. And we've all got to support the fashion industry, in you know, because it's one of our biggest assets, it's true. But I think that talent is rare. And so I claim rare talent, okay? And then the other thing is, I think it's really, really important, my politics. Actually, I think they're really important, and I think that the fashion and the politics help each other. They give me credibility from both sides, and also when I do a fashion show, people say, "Oh, talk about fashion." I can't be bothered to talk about it. Yeah, you can either see it or not. I might say a couple of hints or whatever, but then I say, sorry, no, I've got, what's the inspiration for this collection? They'll say, sorry, I can't talk about that. I've got to talk about Julian Assange, free Julian Assange, totally innocent man, never been charged of any crime.
It's about WikiLeaks and leaking information, and
That's
Julian is saying, well, you know, I have information I want to leak about Hillary Clinton, and we're coming up to the election. But isn't there an argument, Vivienne, that WikiLeaks, if they're leaking personal information, or could put people at security risk? Can you see that side of the argument?
Well, that is why he's very unpopular in England, because the charge against him is this sex thing. In America, it's not that. It's about treason, that you have helped, you know, to expose the criminality of the American government, and therefore that's against the government, you know. And it's the same thing with Hillary Clinton. But to me, Hillary's evil, and I know, you know, I think she's a warmonger. I don't expect the world to change with Hillary Clinton. You know, we're all going for climate change. I'm not pro-Trump. If I would be American, I would not vote for either of them.
Well, what would you
I would not be able to vote for either of them, except if there's a green person. I would vote for a green person.
But Vivienne, we are going to get a Trump or a Hillary, and
of course.
You know, one of the most
I wouldn't
powerful
know
nations.
which is the best.
So which, if you had to pick one of the other?
Well, I won't do that, and I wouldn't even pick Barack Obama over them either, because, like I said, in England, the people are applying the terrible, rotten financial system. There's no difference between them. If they apply that system, which is about war, and she's very, very warmongering person, Hillary Clinton. So it's about war and about, you know, about killing everything on the planet, actually, through climate change. They don't want the rotten financial system changed. You know, so there's no choice between them. You cannot choose. They're all the same.
Vivienne Westwood never shies away from controversy, so stay tuned for more of her candid talk.
Consumption is nothing to do with culture. It's about sucking up opinion. Culture is about freedom. It's about freedom of opinion. You form your own opinions. You're not just sucking up all the propaganda that you're given. Your Dame Vivienne, the Queen gave you, awarded you a damehood in 2006. You have an OBE as well. And because you are known as anti-establishment and as an activist, did you ever hesitate and think, oh, I might not take? I did when I was younger. I did hesitate. And my son Joe was given an OBE, and he decided he didn't want it, for example. But no, I don't know about the Queen regarding what she does. I think Prince Charles is fantastic. He's done more good in this country than any man I can think of in my lifetime. He really tries to help. He's fantastic. And I do think that the position of the Queen is very important because it's social cement. It gives us an identity. And, you know, as a nation, not because she's privileged or anything, but because she's got this job that is all the time promoting the patriotism and the togetherness of England, you know, and I think her position is very good. And the fact is, they are above politics. They're not allowed to be political, and I think that's very good. You know?
And how important are those types of honours and awards to you? Do you like to be recognised by your industry? I mean, the late John Fairchild, famously from Women's Wear Daily, said that you would be the only woman designer remembered from the 20th century. Is that important to you, to be recognised by your peers?
No, it isn't at all. It's not a bit important. My activism's important, meaning I really want to try to make the world a better place. Also, the fact that I'm trying to make my shop and my business into a model company, you know, one that is good for the future. It's about quality. That's what I'm trying to really, you know, it's quality of design as well, not stuff that just goes into landfill, you know. And my slogan for that is buy less, choose well, make it last. You know, and that's what I'm trying to do, and I think that's really important because one thing really important to say is that culture is the future. Consumption is where we're at now. Consumption is nothing to do with culture. It's about sucking up opinion. Culture is about freedom. It's about freedom of opinion. You form your own opinions. You're not just sucking up all the propaganda that you're given.
What do you think the young Vivienne Swire would make of Dame Vivienne Westwood today?
Well, I am going to end with something very sort of pathetic and nostalgic, really. I have lived an incredible life, so have you, but I've lived an even more incredible one because I'm older. And every stage of your life, it is like, it's a different person, isn't it? It's like the paintings, you know, every world is different that you lived in. And I wanted to, you know, I've got 2 children, but I wanted to thank my mother because they loved us, my mother and father. And the mother's love is the mirror of the child. It makes you love yourself. It makes you believe in yourself. You know, you feel protected and cared for. And it's just the most wonderful thing. And then you know, you can then follow your deep interest, educate yourself. They have obviously tried to find you the best education and everything. And I'm going to tell you what my mother said to me. She said, oh, it's really awful having babies. It's really painful. It's actually not, in my experience. And she said, oh, when she had me, she said, there she was in the hospital with this tin bowl. My mother would be 100. She was born in 1915. She would be 101 now. She died just before she was 94. She had a brilliant life. And she said, and she was waving this ball around because she said she wanted to be sick. And then she didn't realise that the baby was born, and she was still waving this bowl around. And they said to her, Mrs. Swire, you have a daughter. And she said, and I looked at you, and when I saw you, I would have done it all again. Isn't that lovely?
And it feels like, Vivienne, you've still got a lot left to do.
Well, I hope to live long enough to keep on doing it, but you know, I wouldn't mind if tomorrow Theresa May said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'd think, okay.
Vivienne Westwood, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think